Welcome to today's deep dive. We are taking on a topic that honestly affects absolutely every single one of you listening.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah, we're talking about navigating the hardest conversations of your life without losing your cool. So our mission today is to give you like a trial lawyer's toolkit to transform conflict from this source of absolute panic into a path for deeper connection.
It's such a critical skill set to develop. We're really looking at how to rewire that immediate, visceral reaction we all have to confrontation.
Right, moving from that defensive posture to actual strategy and
Yeah.
empathy too. We're basing this whole dive on some incredible insights from a detailed interview with trial lawyer and communication expert Jefferson Fisher, which was over on Chris Williamson's platform.
Yeah, Fisher's stuff is just fascinating because he brings that high-stakes courtroom experience into everyday life.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because for so many of you listening, just getting a text that says we need to talk is enough to make your stomach completely drop.
Oh, totally. It's the worst feeling.
It really is. I mean, think about it like a physical injury. If you break your arm, it's clean, right? The x-ray shows a jagged white line. The doctor points to it, says, there it is. That's the problem.
Right, it's precise.
Exactly. But when you step into the world of human communication and conflict, that x-ray machine is just, it's completely useless. We're forced to operate in this emotional landscape that is incredibly murky.
It's the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. There's no clear image of what's wrong. You just get this profound, sinking feeling of impending danger.
Yeah, and why is that? Why are we universally so bad at this?
Well, largely because healthy conflict was rarely, if ever, modeled for us growing up. I mean, for a vast majority of people, the only model for resolving a dispute was either yelling until someone surrendered or, witnessing things physically escalate.
Wow, yeah, that's so true.
We literally lack the neurological blueprints for a calm disagreement. We just don't have the hardware installed.
Which brings us to kind of a harsh reality. You can read all the communication books in the world, but knowledge alone doesn't actually save you in the heat of the moment.
No, it really doesn't.
There's that great Mike Tyson quote Fisher brings up. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
It's so true. Navigating conflict calmly takes immense courage and vulnerability.
Right, because people default to yelling and aggression because it's just the path of least resistance. It takes literally zero emotional effort to lose your temper.
Exactly. And to understand that default setting, we have to look at what is actively happening inside our biology when someone disagrees with us.
The biological hijack.
Yes. The physiological response is this invisible driver behind almost every bad argument you've ever had.
Yeah.
Our bodies just cannot distinguish between social danger, like someone questioning your authority, and actual physical danger.
Like a bear jumping out of the bushes.
Right. Evolution basically repurposed our ancient survival software to handle modern inconveniences.
I love the analogy from the source about trying to explain modern anxiety to a caveman. Like you'd have to tell them, hey, we get completely terrified over a sequence of symbols on a glowing triangle in our hands.
Right, just because the tribe might think badly of us.
Yeah. We are walking around with a nervous system calibrated to survive a lion attack, and we're using it to navigate, like, group chats.
It's a massive mismatch of hardware and environment. When you perceive a social threat, your body immediately prepares for a physical fight.
And you can actually see the symptoms, right?
Oh, they're entirely measurable. Your pupils dilate to take in more light, so whatever is directly in front of you stays sharp, while the periphery just blurs out.
Like portrait mode on an iPhone.
Exactly like portrait mode.
Yeah.
And your jaw clenches to protect your face, your fists tighten, and you instinctively hold your breath. You're basically bracing for a physical impact.
Which brings up that wild case study we looked at. The Reddit user who was tracking his heart rate on a Fitbit.
Oh, that is such a perfect example.
It's crazy. So he's tracking his heart rate during a conversation where his wife asks him for a divorce. His resting heart rate was a super healthy 60 beats per minute.
Totally calm.
Right. But the moment she just uttered the words, "Can we talk?" his heart rate spiked to over 150 BPM.
It's unbelievable.
He's just sitting on his living room couch, but his cardiovascular system is convinced he is in a dead sprint for his life.
And that data reveals the exact mechanism of why conversations derail. Neurologically speaking, once your heart rate crosses that 100 BPM threshold, your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, completely hijacks the system.
it just takes over.
It does. It floods your body with cortisol and adrenaline. And to prepare your body to run or fight, blood flow is literally redirected away from your prefrontal cortex.
And that's the logic center, right?
Exactly. The part responsible for reason, empathy, logic. The blood gets pushed toward your major muscle groups instead. So your logic center basically goes offline. It's starved of resources.
So you literally cannot have a rational, composed conversation because your biological hardware has been unplugged.
Precisely.
Okay, so since our biology is actively working against us, the really critical question here is how do we override the system before the conversation completely crashes?
How do we find the antidote?
Right. If we are in full bear attack mode, what do we do?
Well, the antidote begins with the exact mechanism you naturally restrict when you panic. Your breathing.
Okay.
Fisher has this rule for his clients before they face a brutal cross-examination on the witness stand. He tells them, let your breath be your first word.
Let your breath be your first word. I like that.
Before you respond to an accusation, before you get defensive, you just inhale. You actively elongate the process and slow the timing down, because the person who controls the timing controls the emotional temperature of the room.
Because if you just immediately fire back, you're operating on their timeline, wrapped up in your own panic.
Exactly.
But what if one breath isn't enough? Like, what if your heart rate is still way above that 100 BPM mark?
That is where timeouts become essential. And this is but there's a very specific protocol for it. Research shows you need a full 20 minutes to allow your nervous system to fully metabolize those stress hormones.
Wow, a full 20 minutes.
Yeah, taking a 2-minute breather and then jumping back in does absolutely nothing biologically.
But here's the thing. Doesn't saying I need a timeout feel kind of like you're just abandoning the conversation? Like if someone did that to me, I'd feel really dismissed.
And that's a completely valid reaction. You can't just throw your hands up, say, I'm out, and slam the door. That registers as abandonment to the other person.
So how do you do it?
You have to clearly state your intention. You say something like, I am not leaving this conversation. This is important to me, but I really need some space right now to process. Let's pick this back up this afternoon.
Ah, okay. So you establish the boundary, but you also reassure them that you're committed to fixing it.
Exactly. It's like trying to start a flooded car engine.
Right. If you just keep aggressively turning the key, you're just grinding the starter and making it worse. You literally have to walk away and wait for the excess fuel to evaporate.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
Yeah.
And another cognitive tool for managing this anxiety before it even starts is scheduling what they call worry time.
Worry time, like putting it on the calendar.
Literally, you dedicate a specific block, say Sunday at 2:00 p.m., exclusively for worrying.
That sounds a little unconventional.
It does, but the psychology behind it is incredibly sound. The human brain just despises open loops. We are meaning-making machines, you know. When there's a vacuum of information, we instinctively fill it with our worst-case scenarios.
Oh, for sure.
So scheduling worry time gives your brain permission to rest during the rest of the week. It closes the loop so you don't have these endless cycles of anxiety running in the background.
Which actually brings us right back to that dreaded phrase, we need to talk, because that phrase is like the ultimate open loop.
It really is.
It's an information vacuum where all your insecurities just get immediately sucked in. So to avoid doing that to other people, you should think about delivering bad news like taking a cold plunge.
Yes, the cold plunge approach.
Right, because people universally hate that initial breathtaking shock of freezing water. So we try to soften the bad news. We use the classic compliment sandwich, or we give this massive meandering backstory about a project from last month.
And meanwhile, the other person's just sitting there, their heart rate is climbing toward that 100 BPM mark, and they're panicking, thinking, am I fired? Are we breaking up? What is happening?
Exactly. So the advice here is to just completely avoid the slow wade into the freezing water. Start with the headline.
Start with the headline.
If it's a difficult discussion, just open by saying, this is going to be a hard conversation.
Yeah.
If you're firing someone or ending a relationship, start with the no. Say the hard thing first, and then express your gratitude or give the context.
Don't bury the lead. You have to get right to the point so they aren't left in that agonizing state of guessing.
It feels counterintuitive, though, because we think we're being nice by softening the blow.
We do, but true kindness is clarity. You give them the headline so they can actually orient themselves to reality immediately.
Okay, so let's say you've done all that. You managed your biological reaction, you took a breath, you delivered the message cleanly. How do you handle the emotional explosion that might come right back at you?
Right, the backlash. This requires a really fundamental shift in how you decode intense reactions. There's this profound concept that anger is rarely a primary emotion.
There's that quote from the source. I sat beside my good friend Anger, and he turned to me and said, "My name isn't anger, it's grief."
It's so powerful. When you are confronted with rage, you are almost always looking at a secondary emotion.
Hmm.
Anger is just the armor.
So what's underneath it?
Usually it's protecting fear, profound sadness, or a really deep feeling of being unsafe.
That makes sense. Notice how often an argument that starts with intense yelling eventually just dissolves into tears.
Exactly. The underlying emotion driving the rage is often a sense of self-loathing or shame or regret. Anger is just the loudest, most protective way to express that pain.
But what about the exact opposite of that? What about the person who doesn't explode but is incredibly passive-aggressive? How do you decode that?
Passive aggression is fascinating because it almost always originates as a childhood coping mechanism.
Really? How so?
Well, at some critical point in their early life, expressing their needs directly just wasn't safe or it wasn't rewarded. They learned that the front door of communication was blocked.
So they use the back door.
Exactly. They learned to hint, to withhold, and to manipulate situations to get their needs met without ever having to bravely state what they actually want.
Let's put this in like an adult workplace context. This is the coworker who deliberately forgets to attach the crucial document to an email or, CCs your manager on a tiny typo instead of just messaging you directly.
Oh yeah, we all know that person.
They're communicating extreme displeasure without actually saying they're upset. So how do you disarm that without getting dragged into their passive-aggressive war?
You gently call attention to the underlying mechanism, but without attacking their character. You use phrases like, sounds like you have a reason for saying that, or what's coming up for you right now.
Oh, I like that. It's totally non-defensive.
Right. It signals that you see the deeper issue. You're effectively showing them that the front door is open and it's actually safe to be direct with you.
So recognizing someone is hurting or struggling is one thing, but how do you actually sit with them in that pain without letting it completely derail your own emotional state?
Ah, holding space.
Yes, which is such an incredibly rare skill. There was this beautiful example in the source involving comedian Theo Von and the UFC fighter Sean Strickland.
That is a masterclass right there.
It really is. So Strickland is this notoriously tough guy, right? But during the interview, he was visibly struggling with some deep childhood trauma. He's grasping a water bottle, squeezing it, just desperately looking for physical control while he's emotionally spiraling.
And notice what Theo Von does.
Exactly. Instead of trying to fix it or offering platitudes or awkwardly changing the subject, Theo just sits there and says, "It's okay, buddy. We don't need to talk. I can just sit here with you for a minute."
It's perfect emotional regulation. It
Mhm.
perfectly illustrates that phrase from Connor Beaton, your emotions aren't too big for me.
Yeah, and both of those examples show this biological and psychological concept called vagal authority, right? Let's explore the mechanics of that.
Sure. So the vagus nerve is essentially your body's biological brake pedal. It's the longest cranial nerve, runs all the way from your brainstem down to your gut.
Okay.
When it's activated, it releases acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter that actively slows your heart rate down. It counters that fight-or-flight adrenaline response.
So having vagal authority means what exactly?
It means you possess the ability to activate this brake pedal, even in high-stress environments. You become the thermostat in the room, rather than the thermometer.
The thermostat, not the thermometer.
Right. A thermometer just reacts to the temperature around it, right? It fluctuates wildly based on the environment. But a thermostat sets the temperature.
So the person with the most control in a room isn't the one who is the loudest or the most aggressive. It's the person with the highest threshold for conflict. They can absorb the tension without getting dysregulated themselves.
Exactly.
But here's a massive pushback for all the highly empathetic listeners out there. What if you are just a human sponge?
The empaths.
Yeah. What if you naturally absorb everyone else's sadness or anger? How do you maintain that vagal authority without just drowning in their emotions?
It's a great question. Empathy is a superpower, but it demands really rigid boundaries.
Yeah.
The guiding rule is that you shouldn't carry a burden you weren't actively asked to carry.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Many highly empathetic people confuse empathy with emotional enmeshment. So, for example, let's say you need to tell your in-laws they can't stay at your house for the holidays and they need to book a hotel.
Classic holiday stress.
Exactly. An enmeshed person feels the in-laws' disappointment so acutely that they cave on the boundary. They prioritize avoiding the other person's discomfort over their own peace.
Wow. And there's a sharp distinction to be made here between being a nice guy and being a good person.
Yes, a very important distinction.
A nice guy operates entirely from a place of self-preservation. They just want to be liked, so they avoid telling you the hard truth. But a good person is willing to risk your temporary disappointment by being honest because they fundamentally respect you enough to tell you the truth.
That's spot on. But let's shift gears to the truly ugly scenarios. Empathy and holding space are vital for sadness. But what happens when tactical de-escalation is required?
Like when someone is just being mean.
Right. What if the other person is actively throwing out insults or flat out lying to you? This is where that trial lawyer toolkit really becomes indispensable.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Fisher outlines this potent tactic for dealing with a direct insult. When someone says something ugly to you, you do not fire back.
Not at all.
You give them 5 to 7 seconds of absolute, unbroken silence. You just look at them and let the ugly words fall right onto the table between you.
Because silence is a mirror. It is absolutely agonizing for an aggressor. When you don't react, you completely deprive them of the dopamine hit they were expecting from your outrage.
And then, after that heavy silence, you simply say, I need you to say that again.
Or you can ask, did you mean for that to sound as insulting as it did?
It's brilliant. It forces them to look at their own ugliness, but without the adrenaline and the heat of your reaction fueling them. They have to soberly decide if they're going to double down on being terrible.
And most of the time, they won't. You know, liars and manipulators feed on chaos. They actually want you to get defensive because your anger distracts from their bad behavior. What they genuinely fear is calm, methodical accountability.
But what if the conversation isn't malicious, but it's just incredibly stuck? Like you're both just talking past each other.
Ah, yes. Fisher strongly advises against saying, that's not what I said.
Because that instantly creates a stubborn, yes, you did, no, I didn't loop.
Exactly. Instead, you ask the question, what did you hear?
It totally reminds me of an IT help desk. When your internet is broken, the technician doesn't just yell into the phone, the signal is sending.
Right. They ask what lights are flashing on your router.
Exactly. You're troubleshooting the actual connection terminal instead of just arguing about the signal, asking, what did you hear? Acts as an invited steelman. You're inviting them to articulate their interpretation of your words.
Which reveals the exact point of miscommunication before the argument spirals any further. You're troubleshooting the connection instead of attacking the person.
Such a good tool.
And it's also critical here to avoid giving someone what we call the Cheesecake Factory menu of options.
Oh, I love this concept.
Right. When you're trying to resolve an issue, if you over-explain and offer 10 different reasons, justifications, and caveats, you completely dilute your actual intention. Keep the communication precise.
Because eventually, no matter how precise you are, the conversation is going to rupture. Ruptures are just an inevitable part of human connection.
Absolutely inevitable.
The mark of a healthy dynamic isn't the absence of ruptures, it's the mastery of the repair. So let's outline the gold standard repair process. When we mess up, how do we actually fix it?
It's a 3-step framework. Step 1 is absolute ownership. You just take it on the chin. You say, I did this. And there is zero room for the toxic caveat of, I only did this because you did that.
Oh man, that because you.
The moment you introduce the phrase because you, the apology is completely dead. You're shifting the locus of control and invalidating the whole repair attempt.
So true. Okay, what's step 2?
Step 2 is affirmation. You must actively acknowledge how your actions impacted their emotional state. You say, I can only imagine that made you feel completely dismissed or less than. You are validating their reality.
And finally, step 3 is the team mindset. You reiterate that despite the rupture, you are still a team and you are committed to working on this together.
Ownership, affirmation, team. It is an incredibly robust framework that rebuilds trust faster than almost anything else.
This raises a really vital point about how we evaluate the people in our lives. We often judge a relationship by how fun the good times are.
We do. But the true quality and longevity of a relationship is actually determined by how well you survive the bad times, how well you navigate those ruptures.
Right. So if there's a core value to pull from all of this for you listening, it's that difficult conversations are not battles to be won. They are opportunities for deeper connection. Being right in an argument is massively overrated if the cost of your victory is the destruction of the relationship.
It really is. It's easy to be kind when everything is easy.
Exactly. People will spend years, sometimes decades, living in absolute misery just to avoid 5 minutes of awkward, painful conversation. So I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over. Is the breakthrough you are so desperately looking for hiding inside the exact conversation you are actively avoiding right now?
That's a powerful question to end on.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take these tools, take a breath, and go tackle that conversation. We'll catch you next time.